Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for your patience this morning as worked through some technical difficulties. Appreciate that. Um, just a quick check here, and I'm so glad that Ines is on. In fact, I hope, Ines, that you won't be upset if I ask you to say a few words in just a little bit, because so much of this is thanks to her. So, a quick introduction of myself. I am Melissa Hill Dees. Um, I have been in the ecosystem quite a while. I know how important the sponsors are to every event as a co-founder of Nonprofit Dream, and um, really appreciate the efforts that the sponsors have put in and the money that they have put in to make this happen today. So I'm super glad to be here. Um, I am a true believer in automating what can be automated so humans have more time to do what only humans can do. And the story that I want to tell you today really speaks to that to some extent, right? So, Food Force, we're going to talk about today where it all started, how it grew, and where we are now, because it truly is a story of community, a story of the magnificent and brilliant people that are in the Salesforce ecosystem, and how when we work together, we can accomplish anything. In March of 2020, um, I was supposed to speak in London at London's Calling. And about 3 days before I was scheduled to fly to London, obviously that didn't happen. My daughter came to me. That was when the pandemic really got started good. And she said, "Please don't go to London, Mommy." The first time that my daughter had ever asked me not to travel somewhere. So I took her heed. This was before all the lockdowns came, right? Just as that was about to happen, and stayed home, which was hard for me to do because I love meeting people. You may have seen my post earlier this week on Twitter. Um, my husband and I were discussing our weekend, and I said, "Well, I'm presenting Saturday at Pakistan Dreaming," and he said, "Virtually?" And I said, "Yes," because he knew that if I could be there in person, I would be the first one on a plane to be there. So, not traveling was an interesting thing to have happen. And over the course of the pandemic, people started cooking. It was wonderful. Um, People started posting their things, their cooking treasures on um, Twitter. And we all know if you're not on Twitter, it's a great thing to do because it's a great way to network with fellow Salesforce practitioners. And we found that there was a group of us as Salesforce practitioners that were really interested in cooking, that we enjoyed that. So I started tagging things, hashtag Food Force, just as we came along and saw things that we really liked. And ironically, Rob Cowell, if you know him in the UK, had started using the Food Force tag some time ago, and about 2018, but it had never really caught on because we weren't all stuck home in the middle of a pandemic, right? And you can see as in June of that year, more and more folks were using the Food Force hashtag. We were all cooking. He was one of the first ones to jump on board with this. So you'll see, and we're going to run through some slides pretty quickly here, but just to give you an idea of how fast this escalated and how quickly it grew. Um, I don't know about you all, but we wound up ordering groceries for my mother and having them delivered to her house because she was elderly during the pandemic. We didn't want her to get out and actually have to go and shop for groceries. And a lot of other people were doing that exact same thing. So you didn't always get what you wanted or what you expected. So it began to be a creative effort in cooking. Alex Carroll was another early adopter of Food Force, and come to find out, he wrote a food blog. You'll notice that for me in the South, everybody cooks. That's what we do. I'm just an old Southern lady from the US, and I want to feed everybody that comes into my house. And so food is just part of who I am. And we find out that food is really a universal language. It's part of who everyone is. Whether you cook outdoors like Gary with his outdoor grilled pizza, people were experimenting, doing different things. It was a completely different time. Although in June of 2020, we were still thinking that the pandemic would not last forever, that we would be done and go on to other things. And it wasn't just guys grilling like Gary. Mike DeMaria was in his kitchen cooking up a storm. And remember the name Mike DeMaria because that will come up again. LA Community Group leader Russ Fellman. You can see the amazing breadth of folks that were involved. Amy Singh, Sarah Orens was really instrumental in all the things Food Force that went on. Folks from all over the world started posting. Ankit lives in Germany and is Indian and cooking great Indian food in Germany. Juan from Spain and Jennifer Lang from North Carolina. And everyone is cooking this by this time because the restaurants are closed. We were so spoiled to eating out, and suddenly we're experimenting with what's in our own kitchen. So we could go on and on and on about all the different things that we're cooking. But by the time that we got to the end of the summer and there was no relief in sight from the epidemic and from the pandemic itself and things being shut down and closed down and not being able to have our community group meetings in person, and everything was going virtual and everyone was still cooking. So it was a great way to come together, to learn about each other, to know more about staying in touch, right, and keeping that community going. So by this time, we were all lonely and bored by the middle of August, and we had learned a lot about each other just from the stories that came from the cooking, right? So we had our first virtual gathering, and we found out it's really difficult to cook online. But Sarah Orens actually reached out to me. She said, let's make Food Force a thing. Let's make it a regular meeting. Let's make it a way that we can all collaborate and work together. So we did. And in September of 2020, we created the Twitter handle. Of course, somebody had to monitor that, right? And we did. We monitored it. Everybody monitored. We were tagging each other with what was going on. In September, we had 47 new followers of 2020. In October, another 64, and the numbers just kept growing. So in October, we met again. This time we discussed cooking with cast iron. It was just a fun topic. By November, we had almost tripled our following, and folks were really getting to know each other. We needed a common place to share our recipes, and we all wanted to know the stories that went along with those recipes. We really came to the realization that food is the common language. So at that time, up stepped Mike DeMaria. He built a cooking app and he offered it to Food Force. So Mike and I spent a couple of hours one evening in November to install the app into Salesforce and to create a site that would be the interface for us to share our recipes. So Mike's cooking app and the Salesforce org was absolutely beautiful, and we quickly set up the site. In about 2 or 3 hours, foodforce.org was ready to receive all the wonderful recipes that everyone was cooking. So folks could quickly submit a recipe in a form, a super simple share, search the recipes by the name of the chef, the ingredient, whatever you wanted. And it gave us a way to go back and see and keep track and learn and make those recipes ourselves. We just added a rating system because we want to see what people think about the different recipes, come together with what's going on there. And so as the pandemic dragged on, right, the Food Force family multiplied to 10 times as many as at the start. In September of 2021, Ines Garcia reached out and asked if Food Force would like to create a cookbook. She wanted to sell the cookbook and donate the funds. And I wanted to jump up and down and hug her neck. I was so excited. This is exactly what my dreams had been, that this wonderful community that grew up around Salesforce and cooking would be able to give back in this way. At that point in time, I was finishing my master's in business administration. I was mid-campaign launching a new product. Plus, I was working on writing a book of my own. So I told Ines that I would do whatever I could, but I knew I wasn't going to have much bandwidth. And thank goodness, Inez really picked up the ambition of creating Food Force for Good, an actual cookbook. She pulled together an enthusiastic group of contributors. You probably recognize several of these names from the community. And I really appreciate all these folks who put in the time and energy to volunteer on this project, completely volunteer led. Ines also recruited a nutritionist, Naomi Sakas, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing her last name wrong, but she lent her talents and became a co-author on this book. Mike DeMaria worked intensely with Ines to test recipes and to put information together for the cookbook. And in April of 2022, Food Force for Good, the 101 plant-based deliciousness of the world, was released on Amazon. So it's available digitally or in paperback, and the recipes were submitted by Trailblazers all across the world. All the proceeds are donated to Action Against Hunger. And I want to let Inez say a couple of things here right quickly, if she doesn't mind. Let me see if I can see how to make her a moderator. I can bring her in. I'm obviously not as technically inclined as so many of the other folks are. Plus add. Hey, Ines, can you request to be a moderator? There, thank you.
Hello.
Awesome.
An impromptu addition.
So please, Ines, tell us your vision and what you were thinking with Food Force for Good, the cookbook, and just share a little bit of the wonderfully inspiring work that you've done in this area. Why? Why would you want to do a cookbook?
Thank you. Zero prepare on my talk is in about 10 minutes. But yes, so yeah, I think I published in the past, and it became apparent that it could be a reusable format to do something else. Was we were perhaps many of us in a very privileged position where life didn't change that much. We continue to have exactly what we wanted when we wanted, have not very much impact in the work that we do, thankfully, and digitally connected with many across the world. The reality for most people in this globe was very different. And so, although food brought us together, you get to my tummy, through to my heart, through my tummy. There was apparent that the reality for most people in the world was very, very different. So what could we do with our love for food to inject some love for others? And so this idea came apparent. Obviously, I wanted for it to be a collaborative effort from Trailblazers across the globe, so that we can bring ideas, flavors, and ultimately feed a nation if we can. Early days, we need the help of everybody to help us to spread the word on this. The cookbook, it doesn't only have recipes, it doesn't only have an incredible input from Naomi in terms of nutrition level, but also has a magic formula that anybody can take to, one, inspire your foods and create, like with modular components, something more delicious and better for your gut that you will have ever imagined. So it has a lot of like goodness over there that I think is a good framework for anybody to pick it up. I hope you love it as much as I do at home.
Thank you so much, Ines, and I appreciate you letting me put you on the spot like that. I know the tireless hours that you put in, and I'm wondering, do you want to tell us a little bit about Action Against Hunger and how you decided on that to be our charity that we were working with?
Yeah, of course. So that took quite a few conversations and quite a bit of investigation. So all profits are going to the charity. So the charity needed to be a registered charity, and because my company is based in the UK, then UK based. Now, from the work that I've been doing over the last few years, some organizations have surfaced as particularly good at their investment into impact. And Action Against Hunger is one of those, right? It's how can a recipe book, right, actually be used to feed others? So it made sense. It made sense to be a cause that we'll be supporting with this particular initiative.
I would encourage you, I put the URL here for Action Against Hunger to go and check out all the great work that they're doing. In fact, they have a group of women in Pakistan that are specifically working to combat hunger in Pakistan itself. So I thought, what a great introduction to be able to share this with you all and share that the funds that we are gathering from the cookbook are going to this organization that's working all across the world. They say that life-threatening hunger is predictable, preventable, and treatable. So a world without it is possible. And I love that. Thank you so much, Inez. Thank you for your passion, for your help in driving all of this, because she was the driving force behind everything that happened with the cookbook itself. And just appreciate that so much for being able to extend what Food Force was able to accomplish in its realm. So what's next? Well, we're hoping for many more recipes, right? For me, a recipe that you share is sharing a little tiny part of yourself, especially if you share the story that goes with it. There is a particular salad that I make every holiday, and my daughter, who will soon be 20 years old, thinks that if we don't have that salad, that it's not the holiday. Maybe things like that, recipes that you love that take you back to your childhood, are something that you'd like to share and tell us that story, tell us a little bit more about you. And there's a place to do all of that on the foodforce.org website. If food is the universal language, we want to get to know our fellow trailblazers by learning about your favorite foods, how to make those foods, why they're your favorites. So we encourage you to share a little bit of yourself with the Trailblazer community. Community is the very best part of the Salesforce ecosystem, and we love every bit of it. So I'm excited to see what you all may share and what comes out of the next iteration of Food Force. So I appreciate your time and attention today. I continue to be amazed at what the Trailblazers in our community accomplish every day. And I'm grateful to have had a very small part in the effort behind Food Force. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter, and let's connect. And be sure to follow Food Force on Twitter. And I'm going to put up, I know we have our raffle, and I want to be sure we get that in before the end of our session. But any questions, anything, I did not do a very good job of keeping up with questions in the chat. Let me run back through and see if I can answer anything. Oh, good. Okay, and the organizer put the raffle information in. That's great. So the raffle information is in the URL. I'll stick that in there again just in case you didn't see it. And any other questions, anything that I'm always happy to talk food, happy to talk about any of the things that are going on from the standpoint of working with nonprofits, especially. I do a lot of work with nonprofits, with charities, with education organizations. So be glad to talk with you about that.